Hello, everyone. I'm Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. We are in for a treat tonight. Two authors, award winning authors, are our guests tonight on Authors in Conversation, Valerie Willis and Elizabeth Randall. These ladies have um, an enormous number of titles to their credit, awards, but the stories come from different places. Elizabeth, talking to people on death row. Valerie, paranormal romances. Ladies, I really appreciate you joining me this evening.
Glad to
Well,
be here.
thanks for asking us.
So look, let's just start. Valerie, you also have a publishing company. So to publish, to be an author, and then also have a publishing company, do you ever get in a space of the shoemaker's children are the ones that go without shoes? Do you feel like you're neglecting your writing with your publishing?
There are certain points, especially as fast as we've grown, especially this year. It's I do feel like that a little bit, but at the same point, as the team I grow, I make sure that still, like I tell people all the time, whether you're a new writer or a veteran writer, you have to make time for writing. So I've had to assess, and I usually in November, because of NaNoWriMo, I'll reassess my time management to make sure I get back on track to making time for my writing. So like my team, I'm like, I'm sorry, you guys only give me 4 days a week because one of those days is now officially writing day.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, Elizabeth, you write for different publications, but then you have your other books that you do write. How do you balance your writing?
Well, I retired from being a public school teacher in 2019, so I think it's a little easier for me than some people. Certainly easier than it used to be when I worked full time and was writing books. And in those days, I would work evenings and weekends until the book was finished, usually a year. And it was a very disciplined approach. But I find now that right now, I had two books published in 2022, and I don't have a book contract right now. I'm kind of looking around for what I want to do next, and I'm working on a fiction novel. So I really, kind of get in here and spend maybe 2 to 4 hours a day whenever I feel like it. I'm kind of like Hemingway at this point. So,
What does that mean? Explain that.
what?
Explain to those who may not know what you're talking about. You're kind of like Hemingway. Tell me what you're
Oh,
talking about.
Hemingway lived in Key West for a period of time, and he used to get up and he had a plank or a little bridge between his bedroom and his office, and he would go over the bridge and he'd work for a couple hours, and then he'd go to Sloppy Joe's and drink for the rest of the day. And I'm like that, except I don't drink and I don't go to bars. I probably go out in the kitchen and bake, but I'm really taking it more easy right now. Once I get another book contract, I'll probably, get back into the manic mode.
So, Valerie, with the your balance, you have two young children. You're
Yes.
working from home. You're doing some homeschooling. For those who feel like I don't know that I have time to write, I want to write, but I don't know if I have time. How many books have you published for
Uh,
you?
over oh, like over 50 for myself.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I've been at this for a little while, Pamela. And it's a
Come on,
passion.
Valerie. It can't be that long. I mean, did you really start writing in the fifth grade?
I did, but I didn't officially start publishing until roughly 2009, 2010, when I started playing with actually publishing and professional writing.
Yeah. So you've
Um,
been really busy because you're young. I can tell you're young. So to say I've been at it for a long time.
no, no, I feel like I've been at it for a long time. It's but no, but I write. I think my average right now is anywhere between 200 to 300,000 words per year. I track it, and it's everyone's like, how do you do it? How do you do it? Because they're like, you obviously don't sleep. No, I make sure I get enough sleep. Self-care is a very important aspect of what I do. There is a day where I'm not allowed to work on any book related or writing related stuff, and it focused on my family for that day. They get my Friday evening all the way through my Sunday if needed. Um, but I always tell people you can write a novel on a lunch break. If we're talking about Monday through Friday and the average lunch break is 30 minutes to 60 minutes, and you at least spend 20 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, the average person can usually write anywhere between 150 to 350 words in that time slot. So by the end of the year, you have a 50K novel. You can write a book on a lunch break, but you have to be consistent. You have to make that time. You have to only you can write the book, right? You can but I also tell people there's 20 minutes between my washer and dryer. They don't take the same amount of time. And in that 10, 20 minutes while I'm waiting for the one to catch up with the other, I'm writing. Why not? It's about finding those. You don't have to sit down and spend hours. Not all of us have schedules that allow us to. I'm not retired yet, Elizabeth, and I'm jealous. We don't have that snapshot, but that doesn't mean there isn't always that nugget of time. Instead of flipping through your social media, take that time and just write. Even if you stare at the screen for 10, 20 minutes, you're thinking about the story and you're keeping it on the front of your mind. And in the middle of folding clothes or grabbing that next load, you're going to know what you're writing in the next 10, 20 minutes because you spent the last 10, 20 minutes thinking about it. It's about keeping that momentum going and keeping that habit built up in some manner. So that's my preach.
Well, it makes sense, but you got to have a story to be able to write about. And Elizabeth, one of the things that's fascinating to me about what you do is the stories that you've written about people who are on death row. How did you get interested in that?
Well, I was working at Full Sail, and I didn't really like it. And so I was looking around for something else to do. And this was in 2004, I think. Yeah, 2004. And it was right after a horrible murder occurred in Deltona, the Xbox murders. Have you guys heard of them? Or the Deltona massacre? So I went over and looked at the house and I talked to some people. And then a neighbor of mine told me that her boyfriend was in jail with Troy Victorino, who was one of the men accused of killing the victims at Telford Lane in Deltona. And she, through her boyfriend, hooked me up with Troy, and I started talking to him a lot on the phone and talked to him all through his incarceration and the trial, which I attended every day in St. Augustine, driving back and forth, and wrote a cover story about it for Orlando Weekly. And then when it was over, I kept up the correspondence with Troy. I visited him probably half a dozen times at Union Correctional in Rayford. Because I have a history. I have my father was a victim of a homicide. And so for that reason, I'm very interested in what makes murderers tick, what drives a person to commit such a horrendous crime. And I've known Troy now for, 14, no, more than that, 24, 18 years, I think, 16 to 18 years. And, through correspondence and seeing him. And I don't know how to describe it, but it's helped me a lot with my writing because I see, he's in there with murderers, and their families visit them, and they seem like ordinary people, but they've committed horrendous crimes. So I've always tried to puzzle how that happens, both personally and in my writing.
So what are you finding out? What pushes somebody to that point?
Well, Pamela, what I've found out is that anyone's capable of murder. Usually the reasons are power, greed, or lust. Those are the three main reasons. And if you're pushed hard enough in any direction, most people are capable of murder. And that's why, the Troy and the people I see on death row, they don't seem any different from you and me. And I'm not sure that they are that different. Maybe people who don't commit murders have more self control. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but you can't. What I have learned, and this is important, and I try to convey it in my writing, is a person is not just the worst moment of their lives, the worst thing they've ever done. That's not the summation of any person. That doesn't excuse them from any kind of punishment, but that's not all they are.
Valerie, you are watching very intently. What are you
Yes.
thinking?
No, and it's, as a fiction writer, I love writing horribly flawed characters,
Uh-huh.
because to me, having highest highs and lowest lows is what kind of gives us our humanity. So I tend to do that. So hearing Elizabeth talk about her, people she's interviewed being pushed to the point of crossing that line, right, of taking another life. I Writing paranormal romance and paranormal aspects and alt history aspects, I kind of do the same thing to my characters. I push them to that point to drive a decision to the right or left, for better or worse. And then I show the aftermath, right? Because, for real life, there's a court, there's investigation, there's the fallout. Mine is a little bit more fictionalized, and a bit of paranormal aspect. But what is the fallout for a werewolf going rampant and spreading his curse? He's going to start seeing packs of wild werewolves and be like, I did that. And what choices does he make? Is he proud of that choice, or is he ashamed? So I get to kind of explore like a really interesting aspect of that humanity in a very wilder way, but at its core, I get it. I get it, Elizabeth. And you're right. We aren't just defined by that worst moment.
These two ladies are among the 150 authors who will be a part of the Gainesville Writers Alliance Sunshine State Book Festival, which is going to take place January 27th and 28th at Trinity United Methodist Church here in Gainesville. On the 27th, it's an opportunity for the general public to come and interact with the authors. And these interviews that we're doing is another opportunity to hear from the people who are behind the pages of these books. And this is quite fascinating for me to hear this conversation, because even in the paranormal, the paranormal romances that you do write, Valerie, and then Elizabeth, your fascination with what happens with how people think who are okay with taking another person's life in that moment. How do you all, or do you, stay detached from your characters? How is it that writers do that?
Detach from our characters.
Hmm. Or do you? Is that
I don't really detach from them. I get really involved with them.
okay?
And in fact, the first fiction book I've had published, Fire's the Test of Gold, I got so involved with the characters, I immediately began a sequel because I just couldn't leave them. So, and, I have a journalistic background, and my father and my grandfather were journalists. So that was my original focus, nonfiction. But I'm just starting to, get into fiction more. And I find that the characters that you create are very compelling and almost as real as the people you interview for nonfiction. And obviously, I don't detach because I'm still communicating with Troy on death row and a lot of my other work. There was a lady I interviewed who set up a nonprofit for schizophrenic and brain damaged individuals so that they could learn how to make furniture. And it's been very successful. And so I keep in touch with her and send her money every year. And so I don't really detach. Do you, Valerie?
It's like following a movie sometimes in my head, and I'm just trying to record what I'm witnessing. Is how it feels a lot for me, because you mentioned you come from a background in journalism, and it's almost like I'm journaling what I'm seeing, right? And at the same point, I like, especially my Cedric series, I like looking at dark history and the older mythologies. So like my character Roma Santa, he's the father of werewolves in my series, but his name derives from a serial killer who when asked if he was guilty or not guilty, he said guilty. And when they asked him why, and he's like, I'm a werewolf, I had to eat. Like, and he firmly believed that. And then being able to chase that history back and be inspired by the fact that this was an individual who, the moment he was born, he was branded by his family as the cursed one. He was dressed as a girl for 5 years until the doctor's like, you gotta stop this. And all this recorded information, this someone like that actually existed, and then folding that history into my fictional work, because I kind of want my audience to know that even though this feels unreal, there are very real aspects to what I write. That this, he may not have been an actual werewolf in real life, but his tribulations and this whole moment in Fallout has connections to our world, and how very realistic that these moments of someone going out and not just like killing people, but like eating them and reusing them and in a very methodical way for survival was a thing at one point. And even then it's just like, what do you do with that? So I have a lot of fun folding real life into the fictional world quite a bit. And yeah, I don't think I really detach from it at all. It stays there. And if someone sparks the right conversation, they get a whole lecture about everything I've researched, you know. But it kind of reminds us and grounds us that sometimes real life can be scarier than fiction. That's what I.
Well, yeah, that's what they say. Truth is stranger than fiction, right? Right. So, Elizabeth, some of your writings have to do with historical things that have happened in Florida.
Yeah, a lot of it. So, um, I just had a book published this August called Past and Present Historical Orlando, and it's really kind of a pictorial book. It was a very strict word count. But it was really interesting to me because everyone says Orlando has no history. And I found out it actually has quite a bit. And, you think it was the deep South, it was the Wild West. But actually, Orlando was founded and run by immigrants. And they really made, Orlando what it is today. And I don't think many people know that. But yeah, I've written two books about ghost lore, and I don't say paranormal because it's nonfiction. And ghost lore is what I think of ghosts as a metaphor for history, and they're kind of, making history come alive. And so, of course, St. Augustine is full of history and ghosts. And then I did Women in White, which is Northeast Florida, which is also full of history and ghosts. And then, of course, Murder in St. Augustine is a true crime book about a murder that occurred in 1974. So, yeah, history is kind of my thing. I'm on the Historical Commission in Lake Mary, and I write articles, about people who lived here, long ago. And I feel history, you can take a lot of your fiction. My fictional book, also, I kind of based it on a newspaper article I read. So,
How therapeutic is this for you all, Valerie and Elizabeth? Because for me, this would be kind of heavy, and as a journalist myself, writing, and I've written a book, The Art of Forgiveness, but about how to release, and I guess that's where my detached question came from, but keeping it to the facts. So it's also fascinating for me to hear how you have these characters in your mind. And Valerie, as you said, you feel like a journalist because you're watching what's taking place. That's amazing to me.
I I I would have
And
to
I
say,
ask about therapeutic. Let me get back to my question. How
okay.
therapeutic is this writing for you all? And how do you think this could help other people who may be going through things to write?
So I find that when I'm the most stressed is when I do the most writing. And everyone's like, "Well, how?" I don't understand that. And I said it's because it's almost like fighting bad stress with good stress, right? I can't control my health or family's health. Like when my dad was going through a double lung transplant, I sat at that hospital low in sleep, but the whole time because I couldn't do anything, I was writing. I wrote an entire 80K novel sitting there 3 nights. Like, they were like, "You're a machine." And I'm like, "No, I can't control the outside world, right? I can't there's only so much I can do to help myself, but there's certain points in your life where things are happening and it's very stressful, very intense, and all you can do is make sure you're not your own obstacle and just wait out until you pass that rough patch a little bit almost. So I like writing because I control that world. And even though I write a little bit on the darker side, a lot of more of a dark fantasy vibe with flawed characters who are morally gray in a lot of decisions they make, it's because I'm showing this totally immortal, powerful person who's still making the same mistakes that I do, or someone in our world would make, and they're struggling with it just the same. It kind of gives me that reassurance that even if I had all the power in the world, I still would have a hard time with what I'm dealing with in the real world, and that it's okay. And I can kind of work through or mimic those hard patches and kind of control the outcome in fiction where I can't really control the outcome in my life. Thankfully, my dad made it through, but that's one of my best novels to date. Like everyone's like, "My God, the emotions in this." And maybe part of that not knowing what to do with those emotions got packed in there somehow. But there's a sense of relief of just I can control this fictional world, I can control these characters, and I can detach from the real world for 5 minutes when I've tapped out everything I can do for myself and help pass the time while I wait for that next moment of real life that I can control.
How therapeutic is it for you, Elizabeth?
I'm not sure therapeutic is the right word for it.
Okay.
For me, it's more like my whole life I've always felt, and this goes back to when I was really young too, that if I wasn't writing, I was wasting my time. So I started writing novels and notebooks when I was a little kid, and I had my first poem published in a national magazine when I was 11. And that doesn't mean anything really because I went ahead and had a career in a totally different field because I was in circumstances where I couldn't take a chance on supporting myself through my writing, but I always kept at it. So I would do everything else I needed to do, and I would do it as well as I could. But unless I was writing, I really felt I wasn't being true to myself. So I wasn't doing what I was meant to do. And I've always felt that way. And so maybe that is therapeutic, because
I
if you're
think.
doing what you're meant to do, it feels good.
Right, right. What advice do you give to people who are watching? Because I sat here tonight before we started the show, and I got this journal. It was gifted to me by Barbara H. Smith at a women's retreat at Virginia Beach. And I thought, I'm just going to write every day until I fill this book up. I'm going to commit to writing every day till I fill this book up. Um, but sometimes when I start writing, I feel like I have so much to say that I can't say it all. And so then I stop. And then it makes me feel like, well, I don't have time. So I don't know where to end it. I think. What, what advice would you give me?
Oh, um, a lot of times you have to decide, are you writing for you or are you writing for others? Is would be your first question. Because sometimes we're just writing for ourselves, right? We have something inside us that needs to come out. Um, at one point my mother-in-law was going through a lot, and I did the same thing. I handed her a notebook, I handed her a pen. I said, every night when you feel like you can't sleep and you're tossing and turning, you just write down your thoughts. You don't have to reread them. No one needs to ever read it. You can burn the book if that makes you feel better. Like, but you have all this happening, all these thoughts, and you have nowhere to put them, and they're just festering, so to speak, right? They're feeding off of each other. And I'm like, so put all that negativity and put all those thoughts into a journal, and you don't have to reread your thoughts or anything, but just give yourself that sense of release, right?
Hmm.
Permission
Hmm.
to release,
Hmm.
and not know that you have to go anywhere with it or anything of the sorts. At the same point, when I'm writing a story for that I want to share with people, like I have these cool ideas and I want to share them with people, I kind of sit down and I have to ask myself, okay, what goals do I want to set? And everyone's different. That's the beauty of writing, right? There's no wrong or right way of doing this, but you have to define what your goals are, right? How do you want to write, and what do you define as success or complete? And once you kind of know that, you then just sit down and empty it out, because it's almost like scattering cards. Like all of a sudden the kid has scattered the deck of cards everywhere on the floor. Some are face up, some are face down. And you have to get them all gathered, and then you start putting them in the order they need, or all face up. It's almost layers of the
Hmm.
process. And you do the same thing with your writing. You first gather up all the scattered cards, get them all down on paper, start flipping them face up so you can identify what you have. And then you start rearranging and realizing, oh, this is a Pokemon card. This isn't even part of the deck of cards. That's when you delete out that weird rogue chapter or scene.
Uh,
And then other times you're like, oh no, you can't put 8 before 2 and 3, so let's rearrange it in the right order. And that's where you get your revision process from, right? And then once the cards are gathered, you hand it to someone else and say, hey, can you make sure I have all the cards in line? And that's where your editor comes into play. So that's sort of, I always tell people, you have to decide who you're writing for, whether it's yourself, even your family. It might be just something that you're just trying to capture memories and things that you want to pass on. Or are you writing for readers or for fellow fans? Or are you going all the way up to aiming for a literary agent? Like there's different levels, different goals that you have to set to achieve those things, and be aware of where you want to take it, who you want to share it with.
gotcha, gotcha. Elizabeth, what advice do you have for me?
Well, I think writing every day is key. Years ago, I used to have set Sentinel writers come in to speak to my writing classes. And one of them, Jeff Kunith, said, I know it's really hard, but you need to set aside time, probably before work, to write every day. And of course, I got to work at 6:30, so that meant, I would be getting up at 4 or 4:30, but I did it for years and years, and I wrote for at least an hour every day before work, and then at night and on weekends too. So it's really important to write every day, because even, as Valerie said, if you're writing for yourself or someone else, it doesn't really matter. You want to build up fluency.
Yeah.
And this is what I used to teach my students too. And they would say at the end of the course, now when I see a white, a blank page or a blank screen, I don't freak out anymore, because I know I have something to say. But it takes practice. So
Everything that we want to get better at takes practice, doesn't it?
yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Valerie, Willis, Elizabeth, Randall, thank you, ladies, so much for sharing this half hour with us on at the Wellness Network for Authors in Conversation. And then thank you for sharing your worlds with us on paper as you write. And we look forward to meeting you in person at the Sunshine State Book Festival next year, January. And that's just right around the corner. You know that, huh?
Yeah.
I'm super excited. I can't wait.
I'll look you guys up. It'll be great.
I know, Elizabeth, you're close to me. I'm over in Orlando, and I used to live in Lake Mary, so we need to meet for lunch one time.
Yeah, where do you live?
I live over by the Fashion Square Mall.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, I was there a lot with my last book. So
Yeah, and she has a publishing company.
Yes.
oh, yes, let's Valerie, definitely.
What's the name of your publishing company again?
Four
Horsemen?
Horsemen Publications Incorporated. And then if you're looking for nonfiction, it's Accomplishing Press Innovations. So we also do
That is
textbooks,
exciting.
nonfiction. So it's
How
been
many books have you published so far? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm over 100 authors and 650 plus titles right now. And most of them have ebook, paperback, and audiobook. So you can find them wherever you like to buy your books online.
Well, that's fascinating. Are you on Facebook?
Absolutely. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, willisauthor.com, or even fourhorsemenpublications.com. And you should be able to find me or my publishing house.
Sounds
Well,
good.
and I hope you ladies, as you look at this show, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook, in the comments section, please include your information. And then I'm going to send you the links so that you can send it out to your fans and we'll
Oh,
get to hear your interviews.
this has been your links are very professional.
Mine?
Yes.
Oh.
I've been posting everything you send me, and it looks good.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate that very much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been so fascinating for me this evening. It's just been a pleasure meeting you all via StreamYard, and I so look forward to meeting you in person January 27th and 28th at
All
the
right.
Sunshine State Book Festival here in
It'll
Gainesville,
be
Florida.
fun.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a Starbucks right down the way. Maybe we can grab a Starbucks.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely.
big on caffeine. So
Say again?
I said I'm big on caffeine.
Oh, probably many of us who do this kind of work and our thoughts wake us up in the wee hours to get up and write, which I do.
Definitely. So I'm more of a night owl. I write after everyone's gone to bed and it's nice and quiet. And I like to sleep in.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I
Wait.
tend to do both sometimes, and yeah. Get up, stay up too late, and then get up early. Yeah.
That for a while there, I was doing that too, Pamela.
Yeah. Well, I was like one night, one early morning, I was like, God, is this you waking me up? Is there something you want to tell me? Is this you? Do you want me? Like every time you wake up, it's me.
Yeah.
You don't wake yourself up, so
No.
I have to get up and write.
No,
Well, go ahead.
I have friends that can account for I'll have a crazy dream and I'm like, this is a great story idea. and I can't find pen and paper, so I'll text them. I don't know why. Like, it's not like I can't like put up a voice recorder or no, but no, I text and message my friends at like 3, 4 in the morning, and I'm like, this isn't an idea. And then like the next day they'll call me up and they're like, so what'd you come up with? Like they're so fascinated with how my brain works sometimes. So,
Right. Make sure you say this is a story so they don't say, do I need to dial 911?
no, I usually say that. I said story idea, and then I just start bombarding.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. That's great. Well, again, ladies, thank you very much. And I thank you all for watching, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. We certainly appreciate your support in supporting at the Wellness Network, as well as supporting these authors. Until next time, I'm Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. Remember, there is healing at the well. Make it a fantastic moment. We'll see you next time.